Just a couple days ago, it seems Roblox released a new beta feature called InputAction System, which is an abstracted input system. So I wanted to show how I have uh, learned to use it over just like the past day and show you how you can as well. So I'm going to go through how you can use it for single input stuff. So like any code you want to run just on a button press. How you can use it for hold inputs. So like you can charge something up, just hold it down for a moment and it'll run code over time. And then a very simple way to do toggles. So first of all, make sure the beta feature is actually enabled. So just go ahead and scroll down until you find Input Action System. It should be checked. And then save it. It will ask you to restart, I believe. And if it's not there, if you're in the future, it's not there, it might just be integrated already. But basically, IAS is a very easy form to do inputs, and it's nice because it's like having inputs in a script versus having inputs just in the Explorer, which I think is what they mean when they say abstracted. So I have 3 scripts I want to show, which should hopefully show how IAS works in a hopefully decent way. So, let's get to it. So immediately, it might be a bit hard to understand at first, especially since it's kind of hard to describe without describing other things first. So let's just start by adding an input context. Input context, they're a bit odd. So over on the left here, we have behavior. Enabled just decides whether or not these inputs should work, obviously. And you can think of input context as like a parent folder, or just a folder, or just a way to organize your inputs of a certain category. Priority. Alright, so priority actually works in a somewhat predictable fashion. So I'm going to reset these two. But what you need to know about these two contexts, all their bindings, they're bound to the same key. So both of these are U. And in the script, all we have is action 2 and action 1, both on different listeners or whatever. And so basically, if I change the context over here to be of a lower priority than, say, context 2, then context 2 will run before context 1. So it should say action 2 pressed, and then action 1 pressed, which we can see right here. But we can also invert that, so we can say 999. So then this is a lower priority than context 1. So then it should say 1, 2. And it does say 1, 2. And then, let's say context 2, it's a lower. So I think we can enable sync, and it should only say action 1. No. So sync on this one. So I think it's enabling sync on the higher priority one disables the lower priority one, like such. So action 1 pressed. So myself, but maybe if you're like in a shop menu and you need to disable certain contexts or inputs, so it should say context 2 now only, or action 2. Yeah. So that's just how context priorities work in sync. But in this input context, I'm going to name it to what this script is going to be. So first of all, let's get a local script in here, and let's put this input context into this script. So now it's a child of local script, which we'll rename to character recolorer, which isn't a word, I don't think. And then in starter GUI, I'm also going to do something real quick. I'm going to make a ScreenGui. I'm going to rename this to recolor. Oops, recolor GUI. My mouse is in the way. And I'm going to create a frame in here. Just rename this to something arbitrary, like recolor frame. Then add another one. We're going to add a text button. And I'm going to actually, just like this, I'm going to put it over here. I don't even think this is necessary at all. But it's just what I do when I'm making stuff like this. Background transparency set to 1. take the button, put it wherever you want. I'm going to put it here. Just going to center it. And I'm going to change the text. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change the text, which should be down here, to say Recolor. And then I'm going to add a UI corner, so it's just smooth edges, of course. And I'm also going to add a gradient. If you don't know how to use gradients, you just click up here. Click the ellipses over here. And then you can have your colors. So I'm just going to pick a couple colors I think might be nice. That's a good color. Add one in the middle, which you can do by just clicking here. It'll add like a keyframe almost. I don't know if that's the exact terminology, but you can see it just smooths between the colors, or interpolates maybe, so that's easier to understand. And then the final color, which I don't really know which looks best. I think that looks good. So very easy color. Looks kind of nice too. Just, so obviously, isn't needed at all, but I do have a font I like. So I'm going to use that here. Okay, so we have our button here. That's good. We'll get to why that's important later. And we'll also show one of the very important features of IAS in just a moment here. But let's rename this to Recolor Context. Let's add another child, and this is going to be our action. I'll explain action in just a moment here, because it kind of relies on something to make sense. So, keeping with the theme, I'm going to rename this to Recolor Action. And I'm going to add a input binding. I always duplicate my input bindings at least twice for another reason I'll show here in just a moment. So for this input binding, this is going to be the keybind for our keyboard. It can be any device really. I just always start with keyboard. So I think I want this to be set to R. So I'm just going to click here and press R, and it'll automatically find it. Just match it. And then that's selected. And then I like to name these with the prefix keyboard, or just the device. So in my case, keyboard right now, and then the actual bind itself, so R. And then for this one, since this one is going to be for controller, all controller binds, not all of them, but most of them I think, are preset with button. So you can see button A, and your bumpers, your stick presses, stuff like that, start and select. So I'm gonna set this to button Y. It's also triangle if you're on PlayStation, but it's just unified to A, B, X, and Y. So then I'm gonna change this to controller Y. So basically, what these are doing now is whenever these buttons are pressed, so R on the keyboard or Y on the controller, they will kind of like fire this like an event. It'll fire any code we set to this action, if that makes sense. But basically, these are just our ways of firing that code. So you'll see that in just a moment. Since we also have a GUI button, I'm also going to put that here because we also have UI button. So I'm going to duplicate it once more and rename this to UI button. And then all we have to do is point this to where our button is, so the text button right here, which I'm also going to rename to Recolor Button, just for continuity. So this will be listening for when this is pressed. So then, finally, we can go back into our local script, whatever you named it, and we're going to get a couple things. First of all, I always like to grab our context. So local context, or we can also even say recolor context, just in case you're working with multiple. We'll script dot recolor context, and then we can go ahead and say local recolor action equals recolor context dot recolor action. This is basically all we need. So then we can just say recolor action dot pressed. So whenever it's clicked initially, connect function So this will listen for whenever any of these are pressed. So when any of these bindings are pressed, this code will get run. So we can demonstrate that with a print statement. You just say pressed. Now, whenever I press R, you can see it prints pressed down here, or whenever we click this, prints pressed. And that also goes for controller too. So if we go up here, or wait, no. Over here we click controller, we can see that when we start the game, this is with the controller emulator on, so we can just move this around and stuff. But with this, since we set it to the Y button, we can just press Y and it'll also print. If you don't like the fact that that it's immediately on click and not on release, all you have to do is just change that to released. But it doesn't personally bother me. Okay, so this is called the character recolorer. So let's get that done now. But this is your main way of simple one input actions. So firstly, we need the player and the character. So we can say local player equals game get service players, and then dot local player. Very important because we want the player currently playing the game, not like all the players. I say local character equals player dot character, or player dot character added wait. What this will do is if the character is not immediately available, to my knowledge, it'll just wait until the character is added, and then we'll get it. So then, really all we need to do here is just sift through the character, find what is a limb, so like a base part, and then recolor. So we can do that with a simple for loop, since a for loop just loops over everything in a certain thing. So we can go ahead and say for underscore part underscore, because we don't really need this. This is just the index. It's not important to us. In character, get descendants. You can do get children, but I always do get descendants just in case. Then, oops, do, yeah. And then just to get a basic idea, we can print parts here. So just print part. So for each entry in character, and character's descendants, we'll print the part, and we can see there's a ton of junk in there. So remember, this is on input, so we have to press R. But you can see there's so much stuff here. We can't even recolor some of this stuff. So we do need to sift through it and figure out what exactly we want. And we can do that with a very simple technique called is a, I guess you might call it. So we can just say part colon is a base part. And we also, oh, actually, hold on, sorry. If part is a base part, and part.name does not equal humanoid root part, because that's really useless to us. We're not going to be able to see that even if we recolor it. Then we can print that in part and see what we get. And there should be, yeah, so it's just our limbs and a couple of handles, because I have a hat. I have two hats on, actually. So my throat is drying. Okay, so now that we've kind of filtered through all that we need to, since humanoid root part, useless. We only want base parts, we don't want scripts, animations, basically anything else you can find in your character. And then, basically all we just do here is just say part.color equals color3 from RGB, and then math.random, give it a minimum value, so 0, and a maximum value of 255. And we're saying 255 because that is the max RGB values. Then I am simply just going to copy this bit and then paste it 3 times. So then all of our values, red, green, and blue, are all random. And that's about as easy as the script is. And then whenever I press recolor, my colors get shifted. And of course, this works with R, and it works with controller too. I bring that back up, we can press Y, and I'll do the same. So yeah, that's basically just your single input, single action way to use IAS. But this highlights one of the reasons I like the whole concept of IAS way better. Because if you just wanted to change anything, you just go ahead and change this, like, oh, maybe I want it to be Q. It's now Q. And all I have to do is press Q. And that's it. That's it. That's all you need to do for binds. And controller support, and even tablet support, or phone support, like, look, I can do this. And, okay, it uses offsets, so you want to use scaling for stuff, like GUI binds. But you get the idea. It just works. It's very clean, I'd say. I just ate, and now I have, like, milk voice or whatever. But yeah, okay, so that is our first sort of type of input. Now the next one is a charge script. So we want to be able to hold down the serve button and charge something up. You can also, just real quick, you can also do something like Recolorer action dot, let's go ahead and say keyboard R, keycode, and just change it to something else if you want it, like keycode, Q. Isn't it back at, it's already at, so let's turn this to R. And then I run the script, I press R, it's not working, because it's on Q now. So, that's something you can do. I'm sure you can make a rebinding system with that, maybe, but yeah. So now our next script features a hold button. So, let's go ahead and put this one in starter player scripts. It's just going to be a local script. I'm going to change this to charge counter. I'm going to add a child in here where we put our input context. I'm going to rename this to charge context. And I'm going to add a action in here. It always goes context, action, binding. And then, oh, and I forgot to mention this, but you can totally have multiple actions. Just listen out for each individual one. And then we find bindings. I'm going to duplicate it twice. I'm not going to do another UI button, just because I don't really feel like it. It's kind of annoying. I'm going to pick a keycode. So this is for keyboard, so I think I want it to be C, just for simplicity, since C, charge, it's in the name. So then I rename this to keyboard C. And I find it, and then this one is going to be for controller. So yet again, we can kind of filter by typing in a button. We'll have these, and I think that I want this one to be button B, which would be circle on a PlayStation controller. So controller B, and then that's it. Our bindings are now set up. So as always, I'm going to get my context first. Local context equals script dot charge context. Let's get the action. Local charge action equals context dot charge. Oh, I forgot to rename it. Charge action. Charge action. And then we're gonna make two more down here. The first one is gonna be is charging. This will make sense later. I promise. Local charge counter. And we're gonna set this to 0. And then we're going to use a while true, or a while loop. A while loop. So we first go charge, charge action. And this is probably going to be the most confusing script so far. We say pressed, that's important. Function, and then in here we say if not is charging, then while is charging, sorry, I messed up. Is charging equals true. I already have these scripts pre-written. I just can't really remember them off the top of my head. I keep alt-tabbing to go check them again. But basically, we're saying if we're not already charging, then continue. And now charging is true. But then we already have this while loop going. So while is charging equals true, we're going to say counter equals counter plus 1. Now, charge counter equals charge counter plus 1. Now you can simplify this by cutting out the middleman here. Just doing this and putting the plus before the equal sign. So charge counter equals itself plus 1. That's just, and then we can go ahead and print out the charge counter. But this is already this already poses a very big issue, because this will 100% crash the game, I think. So right up at the top, you want to just say task.wait 0.2 seconds, or whatever variable of time you want. Just anything that's not instant. And then this is only for the pressed action, so we need another one. So we take charge action, released. This is basically all we need for a hold function. And then basically, so whenever the C key or the B button is released, we stop charging, we reset it, and we print the final charge. So is charging equals false. And we go ahead and we can go print charged with comma charge counter, and then we reset charge counter. Charge counter equals 0. We can also go ahead and say charging and print the value charge counter. So this should be it. So we can go ahead and go play. I'm gonna hold down C. As we can see, it is charging. Then we just let go, and it stops. To be honest, I don't know why it's doing that, but if you really want to fix it, you can just set this to -1. If you really want it to be at 0, it just goes back to 0. So yeah, that's the hold function. It's very easy. Basically, at its core, you just need a charge action, or your action pressed and your action released. You can put like a sprint function in here too. Just make sure your pressed action is like kind of while you're holding it, and your released is when you've stopped holding it, if that makes sense. It's unified, and it was kind of weird, but I think it makes sense once you just get used to it. I have one last script I want to share, and this one is it's a light. Okay, so we're gonna need to build the light first. So how I like to do it, I'm just gonna put in a part here. I'm gonna make it like, let's go ahead and 10 studs on each side, and then 10 studs in height as well. I'm gonna move it up a bit. Actually, I'm gonna make it 7.5, 9, and I'm gonna move it a bit closer to the base plate. Maybe align it a bit more. And then I'm going to change this to glass. I'm going to change its transparency to something, pretty transparent like that. Oh, I didn't think about that actually. Okay, for this example, I'm going to turn this transparency off. Just a funky rendering bug. I'm going to change this part name to light container as well. We're going to make a lamp basically, and I'm going to Control D this so it duplicates itself. I'm going to rename this part that's inside to light part. Yeah, that should work. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you name it. I'm gonna make it a stud. A stud smaller in all directions. I'm gonna move it down a bit. Take the bottom up. That should be correct. So then I'm going to change this, make it fully opaque, and I'm going to change the material to neon, and I'm just gonna make it daisy orange. I like that shade of yellow. You can also copy both of these and anchor them, because that is pretty important. And then in light part, I'm going to add a point light. I'm going to set the point light's range to something like 32, just so it has a noticeable effect, and I'm going to change its brightness to 2. Shadows, yeah, shadows. And since this is a bit yellow, let's change this to be a bit yellow as well for continuity. Okay, so this is what our lamp looks like, and so let's go ahead and set it off. So transparency all the way. You could also just change the material, I guess, but I don't really care enough. And disable the light point, the point light. And then I'm going to put in, oh, right. So, bindings in workspace also won't work, I think. There might be something else you need to do, but I haven't figured it out. So I'm just going to put another script in starter player scripts. I'm going to rename this to light control. Light control. And now we get to make our keybinds. As always, we get context. Go ahead and name this light context. Add another child, and this is our action. We'll rename this to toggle light. And then add another one, and these will be our bindings. Duplicate it with Control D. And I think I want this to be F. So this will be keyboard F, because F is usually like the flashlight key in many games. And then for the controller, I think I want it to be left bumper. So this is left bumper, this is L1. So button L1, left 1. And then it is foolishly simple. All we need is to grab our context. First, let's actually grab our light and stuff. So let's get the light part. We don't really care about the light container. So light part equals game. We can go ahead and use get service for this workspace dot light container dot light part. The only reason I'm using get service to grab the workspace as a service is just because it's like a habit at this point. It's just a habit for me. But you can also just do that workspace. Works the same. I'm also going to actually wait for this. So wait for child light container dot light part. And then we want to grab the point light. So local point light equals light part dot point light. Okay. Then we're going to grab our context and our action. So local context equals script dot light context, I think I named it, yeah. And local action equals context dot toggle action, toggle light. And I'm going to make a flag of sorts, just one. It's going to be called local is toggled, and it's going to be false. Yeah, so this one is very simple. It's just action dot pressed, pressed connect function. Also, I would refrain from just saying action and context without like proper names, but mainly if your script is accessing multiple contexts or multiple actions. Like this is fine, but you know, it's always better to just say like toggle light action. So then we just say is toggled equals not is toggled. That might look funky, but it's basically saying is toggled equals what it's currently not. So if it's false, it'll equal what it's currently not, which is true. So it'll be true. That's just a very easy one-liner instead of saying if is false, then is toggled equals true. Stuff like that. And then really all we do is just kind of turn our light on and off. So you can just say if is toggled, then light part dot transparency equals 0, and point light dot enabled equals true. And then we can just say else light part transparency equals 1, point light dot enabled equals false. And that should quite literally be it. So let's try it. I'm gonna press F. I don't think I anchored this. Yeah. There you go. It's a very simple, just a very simple toggle. We can even go ahead and just, oops, this is the wrong script. You can also just go ahead and print is toggled. So that's it. And of course, since we added it very simply, it will work on controller too. So we have our charge with B. We have our light with left bumper. And of course, we have our randomized color with Y. So yeah, that's IAS. I think it's really nice to have simple too, especially for multi-device support. It's just as easy as an extra object, and I think that is very cool. Of course, it is a beta feature, so you might be, I'd say probably expect maybe some issues. I don't know. It seems to me that it works pretty well. So I don't know. I haven't tested it to its extents, and also actions have this type here where you can go direction 1D, direction 2D. 2D would be like moving a 2D object on the screen with, as you can see here, it has, so if you set something to direction 2D, any of the bindings in it will have these other directions. So you can just set that to something. There's a vector 2 scale and stuff. So yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out. And direction 1D would be up and down. Or left and right, actually. I guess those two are interchangeable, depending on what you're using it for. But yeah. Sorry that I haven't learned that yet. I kind of just don't feel like it. Nor do I feel like making another script today. So, that's it. A good beta feature. Yeah!